Rebel Force Radio presents
Experimental Unit Clone Force 99. The defective clones with desirable mutations. They call themselves the Bad Batch.
The Bad Batch.
This is the Bad Batch After Show.
I don't know. The more I think about it, 3 square a day. Pets are welcome. You got all the beautiful scenery there. I mean, I don't know. Is it a prison or is it the latest vacation spot, resort, Club Tantiss, they could call it? I can see people wearing the little oval sticker, putting that on the back of their cars. I went to Club Tantiss. No, it's pretty bad. It's pretty rough there as we start Bad Batch Season 3, the final season of the Bad Batch. And when the second episode rolled, I was seeing Wrecker and Hunter again, and I was like, oh yeah, these guys. We haven't spent time with these guys. We ran the math here at RFR for 329 days. That was the last time we spent time with the Bad Batch here on the Bad Batch After Show. So not quite a full year, but we are really glad to be back and spend some time with Hunter and Wrecker and Omega and Crosshair and even old Dr. Hemlock. But most of all, we are happy to be spending time with you all of you that are joining us here on the live stream. If you're listening via delayed podcast, you want to make sure you join us here every week on the Rebel Force Radio Bad Batch After Show. Check rebelforceradio.com or follow us on social for the schedule. Best thing you can do is just follow us on YouTube and you get those announcements. I hope everybody got the alert on their mobile device saying that Rebel Force Radio was about to go live, and then when Rebel Force Radio goes live. So lots to break down. It was a triple feature this week. 3 episodes to kick off the premiere, and there's going to be much to discuss. There's a lot on my mind. I know there's a lot on your minds, and I know there's a lot on this guy's mind, and that's, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. We're back for the batch, and it's bad. Actually, I thought it was pretty good. So you're painting all these pictures in my head. You know, you're talking about the benefits of being in Mount Tantiss. You get 3 square meals a day. Yeah. Was Omega eating chicken nuggets?
It sure did look like it. They must not have been very good because she was all too happy to leave those for Batcher.
Yeah, Batcher. She could use a little help with naming pets too. Batcher, that's a little cringe. Whatever. And
it's
then
a little on the nose, but it grew on me.
And Mount Tantiss is a resort like Club Med.
That's what I'm thinking. Club Tantiss.
Clone troopers doing aqua aerobics and tropical drinks are flowing. Well, yeah, it was great. I mean, I really love the whole idea of Mount Tantiss anyway, because it harkens back to the Thrawn trilogy from Timothy Zahn and Heir to the Empire. And also there's such a heavy dark empire vibe to everything that's going on with this show. And I'm sure I'll mention that later, but Dark Empire was a comic series that came out from Dark Horse in the early 90s, and it was awesome. And it fueled a lot of the storyline for the Rise of Skywalker. So, which is, and I feel like I'm a rarity in fandom, someone who actually likes Rise of Skywalker, but approaches Star Wars with, some critical analysis.
Yeah.
Sometimes I throw that critical analysis right out the damn window, son.
I think, I feel like you like it with a little asterisk. I mean,
yes.
For what it was trying to do, for what it needed to do, and for just the insanity of some of it.
I like it with a little asterisk. Actually, let's just make it a big asterisk. Okay.
Big ass right next to I like it. But I really enjoyed getting back with the Bad Batch. And what I really liked about this 3-episode arc was I thought the pacing was really great. And I didn't think there was a lot of wasted time. I thought that for the most part, we needed to see all of this. And if they would have just focused on Omega and Crosshair without that interlude in the middle and bringing us up to speed with what's going on with Hunter and Wrecker, it would have been a little too bland. We needed to break it up because the whole point is that it's Groundhog Day for Omega and Crosshair. And I think they did a great job of sort of planting or painting that picture, especially with the sink that was dripping. I mean, this was I thought, very cinematic. This wasn't kiddie cartoon stuff. I mean, I don't consider this show at all to be a kiddie cartoon. Not that you can't watch it with the kids, but it's deeper than that. You know, I think it is more along the lines of, you know, what I consider one of the greatest cartoons of all time, Batman the Animated Series. It is darker. You mentioned Dark Empire and it being dark. This show is dark, and there were a lot of adventures of the week in previous seasons. This certainly didn't feel that way. I hope that they keep this momentum going. They've got 12 more episodes, but I was really glued the entire time. My attention really did not wander off. And it's hard for it to wander off because the show looks so damn good, and they haven't missed a beat there.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's that Clone Wars style of animation that's always felt very cinematic to me, at least after the first season or two of the Clone Wars. But the monotony of the Groundhog Day, as you call it, that sort of pacing really did set the stage. And I was really happy to see a 3-part premiere that focused on Omega at first, then the Bad Batch in the middle part, and then back to Omega, and the consequences of the things that were being set up in the first episode. Almost all of them paid off.
Yes.
And it was just really interesting to get back in touch with these characters, but in a way where the stakes were really high, and it's paying attention to the big mythology, not little individual missions for Sid, which kind of got driven into the ground. But you have to have that stuff to establish the characters. We have to live with them. We have to go through what they go through before the stakes get risen to the place where they're at to start off season 3. So I have a feeling this entire season is going to be just dense with propelling the story forward, the big picture story, the mythology stuff. Like when the X-Files, they would have those freak of the week sort of investigations they would go on. But then as the seasons would wind down, you'd start really sinking your teeth into the big mythology stuff. And that's what's happening here with season 3 of The Bad Batch. And from what I understand, and from what I believe, it's going to maintain this focus throughout the whole season.
I hope so. It's great. Let's do a quick tale of the tape. We're talking about 3 different episodes. Start with the first episode, Confined, directed by Saul Ruiz, written by Jennifer Corbett, story editor Matt Miknovitz, and clocked in minus credits at about 30 minutes even. And original air date for all of these episodes, February 22nd, 2024. The second episode, Parts Unknown, was directed by Nate Villanueva. I remember when he was Nathan Villanueva. Now he's Nate Villanueva. Matt Miknovitz, again, writing, and the story editor, Matt Miknovitz. And then finally, Shadows of Tantiss. Oh, and by the way, that was about 24 minutes, sans credits. And then episode 3, Shadows of Tantiss, Club Tantiss, directed by Stuart Lee, written by Matt Miknovitz, and the story editor consistently across all these episodes is Matt Miknovitz. A couple of standouts. We'll obviously talk about this in greater detail, but the return of Ian McDiarmid into the role of Emperor Palpatine, and also Daniel Logan. How great was it to hear his voice as Mox, a young clone, a teenage clone? So that was welcome. Mox, yeah.
Yeah, I keep calling him Maz.
Maz?
Like, not like Maz Kanata.
Hey, I'm Maz.
Where's
my boyfriend?
So as I'm watching it, first thing in the morning, I'm watching this show, and they feature young clone cadets in the second episode. And I was like, wait, is that Logan? I was like, no, that's not him. Why don't they bring in Logan for this? He'd be perfect for it. And then they hook up with Mox.
Yeah.
And I'm listening. I'm like, ooh, I think one of them is sounding like Daniel Logan. I see what's going on here. They wanted to mix it up a little bit. I think Danny could do the voices, but the other guy, he sounded the same for both characters.
And it was the same actor for both of those characters.
Yeah. A kid named Julian Dennison, who's like 21 years old. and he has had roles in Godzilla versus Kong and a few other things. But obviously, his career is just getting started. Oh, he was Fire Fist in Deadpool 2. Fire Fist in Deadpool 2.
Well,
so
I got
he's got
tipped off by a friend who said, "Hey, Daniel Logan is got a voice. Is doing some voice work in the season premiere." And so when I saw the clones, the first two, what was it, Socks and Mox and
Deke and Stack.
Deke and Stack. Hey, Stack, I loved him in Goodfellas. Everybody loved Stack. Just a little reference for you. But anyway, he says it's Daniel Logan, and I'm watching the episode, and I'm like, no, dude, it's close. I'm like, it's close, but it's not. That's not Daniel Logan. And then it wasn't until that we run into to Mox that I go, oh, that's Daniel Logan. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
But it is weird. Why not have Danny do all three?
I know. I was texting him this morning.
What did he say?
He said, hey, great job, is Maz. And I was like, oh, Mox. And then I typed Mox. And we just started talking. And it was like, he was sort of thinking the same thing I was thinking, was Mox would be revealed to be Boba at some point, because the timeline does work out. And I don't know why Boba would be hanging out as a clone cadet in Dr. Hemlock's facility, but it could have been some sort of covert mission that Boba was on to try to steal supplies or whatever, and then he just got caught up in something.
Well, you have to wonder. What we know now about Omega is that she's the first successful transfer of the, what was it, the M
count.
The M count. She's the first successful transfer without any degradation of her cells. You would wonder if Boba Fett might have the same talent, the same ability. And could they at some point start asking questions about, well, what makes Omega so special? And then that could lead back to Boba Fett. I don't know. Just tossing it out there.
Beyond Boba, who was the prime clone? Jango Fett.
Right.
Let's talk about M counts with him. He was obviously a very skilled warrior and very successful in everything he did, except when he came across Mace Windu on the arena floor, and his head ended up on
that was
the arena
fast.
floor. But but Mace Windu was one of the top Jedi in the galaxy.
And that battle, by the way, I believe that battle was supposed to be longer. That fight between Mace and Jango. I think there's some animatics that there was a little bit more going on. It wasn't just jump down and chop the guy's head off.
Yeah, I think there is. I think you're right about that. That does ring a bell. But so Jango Fett could have been a guy who had a significant midichlorian count. And M count. Let's just call it what it is, midichlorian.
Right.
I find it so interesting that so many elements from the prequels are really coming into play with some of the Star Wars stories we're getting nowadays in shows like The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch. Obviously, The Bad Batch is much closer on the timeline to the events of the prequel, so it makes a little more sense. But to have elements like midichlorian count and cloning in general, and even those laser doors, those are back now from the Phantom Menace.
Yes. They are. Yeah,
and they're always hiding. They're always hiding some important stuff. So
yeah. By the way, this is a call-in show. If you're listening live, 708-866-1737. That is the number. Jim and I are going to set the table here. We've got our fantastic call screener, Tyler Page. He is standing by, and he is ready to screen your calls. Looking great in his flannel and his big, long beard. Looking good, Ty.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been
growing
it
back for another season.
I've been growing it since last season. So
yeah, for 329 days. But no, it's awesome to have you. Like I said, Mac and I, we'll be setting the table and then turn it over to you a little bit later in the program. So I'm sure we're going to say something that you agree with, something you disagree with. We want to hear it all. And if Bad Batch isn't your bag, we want to hear that too. All opinions are welcome here. So the first episode opens with that shuttle crashing. And Jim, as you talked about, everything in this first episode gets a payoff. The shuttle
Yeah.
crashing, Batcher and the kennels, the
blood, the stuff with the blood,
right, in the
when they
centrifuge
put
and
the
all that.
blood, the vials of blood are in the centrifuge, and then you see a drip of blood going into the vials. Is that Palpatine blood? Is that from the Emperor himself? And they're trying to see how it mixes.
Oh, like right at the beginning. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Mm.
I think I might have actually maybe not. This is one of the screen grabs that I got, but I know what you're talking about. Because I remember that. It's possible, but what this reveals, I think, is what they're trying to do. And there's some lines that I want to cite here between Omega and Nala Se. And this is after Nala Se questions Omega about her blood being drawn. She says, your sample was taken. Mm-hmm. Emery said it was routine. Why are you discarding it? Tell no one. It is safer this way. This research is not like what we did on Camino, is it? No, it is not. The Empire seeks the reproduction of a genetic M count, but the experiments on the specimens have yet to yield the desired result. What specimens? You mean the clones? No, not the clones. I actually got chill bumps when she said that. No, not the clones, because the clones are just fodder for these experiments. They're not the real specimens. The real specimens in this instance are, I think, Grogu. I really think it's Grogu and specimens like Grogu that they are trying to pull. They have an exceptionally high midichlorian count, and they're trying to transfer that into clones.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some sort of tie-in with the Mandalorian in this show, and we'll have to see it this season too. So that'll be pretty exciting. The big tease happens in the third episode when the Emperor visits, and they walk him into see the room where Project Necromancer is all going down, and then they open up one of those cloning tubes, and he looks into it, but we as an audience don't see what he's looking at.
Right.
So there's obviously some reveal that's going to be happening in this laboratory later this season. So
I was thinking it was Nala Se's prison, Jim, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, it is, but it's also the other laboratory, the laboratory that we're not seeing.
So what are they looking at? Is it a Snoke or is it Grogu? Grogu, the last time we saw him, he was being taken away from the Jedi Temple during the events of Order 66. He was being rescued by Kelrin Beck, who takes him to that platform where a Naboo ship is waiting, but we don't see what happens after that. I don't think that Naboo ship makes it very far. And then Grogu is put into some sort of status, and that's what we're looking at here in this scene when they're in the laboratory. That's what Palpatine is looking at. He's looking at Grogu. And Grogu was, remember, when Ahsoka first met Grogu, she said that there was a big period of time which little Grogu could not account for. And also there's the age factor. Why is he's 50 years old plus? How come he's still a baby? So these are the things that lead me to believe that that's what Palpatine was looking at in that Project Necromancer lab, was Grogu in status, and they were showing him off. Now, Nala Se does say something about one of the test subjects being able to withstand, but that's not what the Emperor wants. He wants more midichlorians, I think. If that was actually what they were talking about, if they were talking about Grogu being able to withstand it. And then these experiments just keep going on and on for like the next 25 years.
Yes, that's the other thing to keep in mind. And I had to keep reminding myself of that, is that indications are, at least Hemlock's line to Palpatine, is that this is making really good progress, that this is going really well, and that this, what we find at the end of the three-parter is that Omega is able to withstand this transfer, and you think, oh, well, they're at the finish line. They're at the end of this. But you're right, Jim. This is something that's going to go on for almost 3 more decades. So there's going to be all kinds. We know there's going to be all kinds of setbacks. Some of them are going to be exerted from the outside, from enemies of the empire, and some of it's going to be just within failures. They're going to lose people. They're going to lose probably Nalisay at some point, I would think. So yeah, this is far from over, but it's hard not to watch this and feel like, oh, they've nailed it. Like, this is it. This is what they've been trying to do.
Of course, Palpatine's been collecting other Jedi and putting them in a status, which we see in the
Yes.
Fortress Inquisitorius in Kenobi.
Right?
But I still think there could be a Snoke in there somewhere. I think Snoke is more toward the end of the period of experimentation. Like, he's more sequel era. I don't even think Snoke's around during Mandalorian era. I think
Didn't they look like Snoke?
What's that?
They looked like Snoke in Mando.
I'm trying to think, because they did find some cloning. Well, I mean, obviously,
They had the Moff Gideon clones.
Moff Gideon.
Yeah.
He had cloning containers, but
That
were
was
they
nightmarish.
Snokes in there? Were they Snokes in there? Maybe he's the one who discovered the Snoke. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think Gideon was cloning himself. That's what I think he was doing.
I think he was running a parallel program to be the Emperor of the Universe himself, is what I think. I think he was. Yeah, I agree.
Because he was very impatient with the other Moffs during the Shadow Council meeting. And also during that meeting, it's mentioned that Hux's father, Brendel Hux, was the guy who was in charge of Necromancer at that time. They mentioned it. I watched that sequence just before
they
we
dropped
started
the name
show.
Necromancer in Mando. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And they're saying that Thrawn's return will give Hux time to complete Project Necromancer. So they're like, they know they're at the finish line by the point of Mandalorian. They know they're getting close.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to Rise of Skywalker and somehow Palpatine returned. But everyone pays attention to that. Nobody pays attention to what the Hobbit says afterwards when he says, dark science, cloning,
Right.
secrets only the Sith knew. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing them discover these secrets here in this episode of Bad Batch, or this era of Star Wars. So yeah, there's a lot of different places that we can look at where this will connect the dots with a bunch of other Star Wars stories, even stuff going all the way back to the expanded universe days. It's all sort of coming together in this, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, you see some juxtaposition of the type of prisoner that Crosshair is versus Omega. There's an effort to try and make Omega feel like she's not really a prisoner, but she is. She's definitely more of a prisoner than she was when we first meet her, and she's on that clone base. On Kamino.
So we get to see how much time passes, because when we first see her, she's scratching those hash marks on the wall.
Yeah.
And there's like 10 days there. And then the next time they show her, there's rows and rows of hash marks, and she has a ponytail just like her sister Emery, her big sister.
Yeah, that's right. She does have a ponytail. Yeah, the hash marks, that kind of reminded me a little bit of Rey. Rey does the hash mark thing in The Force Awakens.
It's what prisoners do.
Yeah, I guess it is. It's more of a prisoner thing than just a Rey thing.
She was counting days down for when her family was
her parents left. Yeah.
And that was never going to happen.
But it's the same day every day for both her and Crosshair. But I do love the interaction between the two of them. You know, like, she's this incurable optimist, Omega, and you got Crosshair, who's dealing with all kinds of baggage. Like, part of him feels justified in doing what he did. Part of him feels really guilty. Part of him feels like he was duped by the Empire. and you got this precocious kid who's coming to him every night to basically read him bedtime stories, and he doesn't want any part of it. I mean, at least he acts like he doesn't want any of it. But look, what else are you going to do when you're in prison? So I think there's a lot going on in Crosshair's head. I think just looking at Omega fills him with guilt and shame. But yet at the same time, good soldiers follow orders. He's still very, very conflicted. But he's super honest. I mean, he even tells Omega at one point that that he wouldn't think twice about escaping without her. That would be that would be it. She says, I think Omega says, well, that's not true. I mean, that's really sort of if you were to break this episode down, or these 3 episodes down, into sort of like a little mini movie, Omega's primary motivation occurs in that scene where she tells him he's lying, that he wouldn't abandon her. You wouldn't do that. You're my brother. He says, I'm not them. She says, I'm not giving up, Crosshair. I won't let you either. And he says, don't risk anything for me. I belong in here. That's the one thing too. I belong in here. So he knows that he's guilty of a lot of things, betraying his brothers, betraying Omega to some degree,
betraying the Empire,
Empire.
He was sworn to serve. So yeah, he's Joe Betrayal.
Yeah.
And he also says that thing to her: just because they're clones doesn't mean they can be trusted.
Yeah. Now, not all clones are your friends. Yeah.
And he was referring specifically to Emery, but I was wondering if there's some other maybe foreshadowing there that later he might turn on Omega and everyone else. I don't think so. That's not what I want to see. I mean, even after he said that, Emery gave Omega back the little Tuca doll that she made, the little homemade Tuca doll. So just proving she has a heart, because earlier in the episode, Omega says, I never knew I had a sister. It's nice not being alone. And Emery she doesn't respond at all. I mean, there's no response from her at all. And later it shows, maybe she does have a little bit of a heart, and maybe there's something about her that actually can be trusted, to be contradictory towards Crosshair and what he says.
Yeah.
Is that maybe there is a sisterhood between Emery and
there could be.
Omega.
There's a line in there where Emery says, or Omega says, if you're a clone like me, how come I never saw you on Kamino? She says, because I was sent elsewhere until Dr. Hemlock took me under his wing. He saw potential in me, like Nala Se sees in you, which makes me wonder if Emery is not also someone who has successfully taken in some midichlorians herself. When they talk about, because what else? What is that potential she's talking about? She says, like Nala Se sees in you.
I was just wondering, when she says she was sent off, was she maybe placed in the Empire as sort of a double agent, because the Kaminoans were not trusting the Empire at that point, and somehow they got her to join their ranks, and that's how then she fell in line with Dr. Hemlock, because she had knowledge of cloning, and maybe her whole purpose is to sabotage everything the Empire has been working on. I don't know. I'm really stretching now. But you like to try to stay on top of certain things that happen in the dialogue that could be foreshadowing. Here's a big question I have, Swank. And if you can't answer this, maybe someone in the chat will, because I tried to find this out in the half hour leading up to us going on the air, but it suddenly occurred to me, I couldn't recall how Crosshair injured his hand. And I thought, well, the last time he was free was on that ice planet when he assassinated his leading officer, his commanding officer, and that's why he got incarcerated. But how did he injure his hand? It must have happened over the course of the last couple of episodes from season 2, and I just couldn't find it. Does anybody in the chat remember? Because it's becoming an issue now. when as soon as he got out and he was out in the fields on the planet Wayland, or out in the jungle of Wayland, and the other troopers were moving in on him, he opened fire on them and he missed by a mile. And that's very unlike Crosshair.
But I thought that I don't know that it was an injury. I thought what they were alluding to is that he was having a shaky hand, like he was having some sort of,
Like the
perhaps
hips?
neurological episode or something like
Oh.
that,
Well, yeah, he did,
like tremors.
yeah, that could be. Okay. Yeah.
So as opposed to an injury.
Has it been mentioned before these episodes, or is this a new development with Crosshair?
They do a zoom in on it at the very beginning, and then later Omega says your hand's getting worse. Like as he's sitting there in his cell, like he's got his hands down in between his legs, and there's some sort of like spasm or tremor or something going on. That's how I took it. I wasn't looking for like a literal injury.
Yeah.
Because I wonder
such a
if
sure
he's
shot, if you're going to do that to him, you got to explain why that is. You just can't all of a sudden have a gimpy, yippy hand and there's no
Yeah, like-
explanation for it.
right. It reminds me of Wrecker's headaches. That was an ongoing thing in the first season, and it ended up being because of the
Yeah. I guess.
inhibitor chip or what have you. But yeah, I think there's something neurological wrong with Crosshair, which could be a result of all of that. I mean, they were turning him, the dial up on him on those machines all the way, and he was so resistant to it. So I think that might be what it is. His brain, he's still in charge of his faculties, but it's taking a hell of a lot of effort to keep all that they did to him at bay and from having its impact. But that could be real interesting if, he's Crosshair. If he loses his ability to be this expert marksman, what role would he have, even if he comes back to the Bad Batch? That's like Hunter losing his sense of tracking, his sense of smell. What's his purpose going to be? I mean, this guy could be in for a really tough time. But so Omega's primary motivation here is about escape and saving Crosshair in more ways than one. Literally saving him from the prison, but also saving him and his soul, I guess you could say. So the second episode, where everything is set up in the first episode. The second episode, I have seen some people saying that this is a filler, and believe me, I'm no stranger to saying, hey, when I think something is filler, I'll say it. But I think this episode really was necessary because it shows, one, that the Bad Batch is looking for Omega, how they're looking for Omega. And I thought it was pretty clever that they're still mercenaries, they're still guns for hire, but they're not doing it for cash. They're doing it for information now. They're trying, they got all the cash they need. They hit pay dirt at the end of season 2. So they're doing fine, but now it's about what can you tell me? And we find ourselves with the Durands, and I need a refresh on Roland Durand. Where did we meet him before?
Well, I do recognize the name, but I'm not here to refresh you, Swank. So I can't remember is what I'm trying to say. I knew the name right away.
Someone can refresh me. He's a Deveronian.
It's Clone Wars.
It is. Is it Clone Wars or is it Rebels?
Oh, if it's Rebels, then I'll never remember.
Yeah. Well, believe me, we've got people in the chat. So give us a Wikipedia or Wikipedia entry. Give us a call on Roland Durand. Isa Durand, by the way, voiced by Hollywood royalty, Angelica Houston. That was really cool. That's quite a get. She's sort of a big deal.
What did she do?
What's that?
What did she do?
She was Isa Durand. She was the woman.
No, I mean, why is she Hollywood royalty? Who is she?
She's John Huston's daughter. She was married to Jack Nicholson. She played Morticia in the two Addams.
Oh, that's right.
But she also had a whole bunch of other big movies in the 70s.
I'm familiar with the name.
Yeah, but she's the great film director John Huston. It's his daughter. So
got it. Yeah, Roland Durand was he was a criminal. He was the son of Isa Duran. He appeared in Star Wars Rebels in the episode Infested from the first season. And so they're just bringing him back. Oh, and they do have a hang up with the Pikes. The Durand.
Yeah, so we see the Bad Batch bring in a Pike, and they're really incredulous. They say your willingness to cross the Pikes shows how desperate you are. The Pikes are, and so they say that Dr. Hemlock stole someone from them, and we heard your syndicate had connections needed to find the Imperial space.
I have to correct myself. It's from the first season of Bad Batch, not Rebels. First season of Bad Batch. They were their first appearance was season 1, episode 13, Infested. Why did I think it was Rebels? But I have to clear that up because everybody's gonna be yelling at me over this.
We'll hear about it.
It's D-level character.
Yeah, right. I have this running list of all the characters that we've met from the beginning of the show.
Wow.
And I looked back and I did not capture that name. So it just, again, small potatoes. They brought him back. No, Clancy Brown did not voice the first Duran that dropped through the floor. Thanks, Troy. Troy in the chat is asking. I also thought that was Clancy Brown. It's not. I thought that it might have been that same Clancy Brown character that we meet in Mandalorian, the Deveronian. Thought it would be the same, but it is not. As a matter of fact, I wrote it down here. I don't have it in front of me, but I can confirm it's not Clancy Brown and it's not the same character.
Watching something recently with the family and Clancy Brown showed up on it. I can't remember what it was. But of course, Wendy's like, who's Clancy Brown? And I think we all said in unison, Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. So that's a language Wendy can understand for sure. SpongeBob.
Yeah, it was this guy, and he's nothing, and it couldn't be that same character because I'm thinking with that trap door, I don't think it's I don't think it's an emergency exit. I think that it's like Bond layer stuff where you fall down, you go all the way, you break a few bones down, then you starve. It's pretty terrible. Oh, you know what? Something that I thought was really, really cool, kind of bouncing all over the place in this episode. But as far as like breaking it down, you basically got Bad Batch. They get the intel. They go to the planet and they find that, there was a base there, but it's been completely destroyed. It's been razed. And then they have this moment of thinking, oh, man, what if Omega was there when they ordered this base Delta Zero on the facility? And Jim, we've been seeing this all through Rebels especially, and now Bad Batch and in The Mandalorian, about how the Empire covers their tracks. When they get done with a planet or a system, they just raise the hell out of it. We saw it with Mandalore. This is part of their MO. Leave no clues behind.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, that stuff was even happening during the course of the Clone Wars, because we see that flashback with young Cassian Andor in season 1 of Andor, and he's on his home planet, and they come across a big chunk of land missing. It's like, what? There wasn't a crater here. This used to be someplace. So
this used to be someplace. My city is gone.
I don't know if that's a separatist thing that the Empire adapted, or who knows.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because as you're watching the original trilogy unfold, the Empire feels like they are so bold and they're so out in the open with everything. Like they're so ballsy. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're trying to cover anything up. But with all this newer material, the Empire is really underhanded and sneaky and constantly covering their tracks and constantly trying to portray themselves as something they're not. It's just something that never really occurred to me, when the original trilogy was happening.
Well, they get really ballsy once that Death Star becomes fully operational.
Yeah, I
That
guess
sort
so.
of gives them a carte blanche that they never had before. Even in Rogue One, they try to cover up the destruction of Jeddah City, saying it was a mining mishap or something.
Right.
You know, and even Darth Vader says to Krennic, "There is no Death Star." You know,
Yeah.
they're still on the down low. But once that Death Star gets operational, it's everyone lets their
They
freak
go
flag
balls
fly.
out. The Emperor gets rid of the Senate. I mean, all the big bold moves
Yes.
happen. So yeah, they're no longer in the shadows, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, this episode was absolutely necessary, but not a lot happens. We meet these clones, whether or not these young clone cadets, whether or not there's going to be any kind of a payoff at some point, I don't know. I think they're going to be dropped off with Fee over on Pabu to live on that island planet that they talk about. And then they do have a clue they were able to hook up Gonki to one of the terminals and figure out what the next clue is as they keep trying to find Omega. They have a system name, but not much else. But this episode, like I said, it was welcome. I was glad it was there, but not a whole lot to really take apart here on this. But it was cool to hear Daniel Logan back in Star Wars. And I guess the one clue maybe that this episode offered with these is it was interesting to me that these cadets knew that the Bad Batch were 99s. They said, you don't look like clones. They must be 99s, defectives. And Wrecker goes, defective and defective.
Oh, he's heard it all before. I think, they used to hear that amongst the ranks of regular clone troopers, the regs,
Yeah, right. Do you remember when
they were always outsiders?
Always, right? No one wanted to sit with them at the lunch table in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
And that's Omega was kind of attracted to that. But what we've learned is not only were these kids part of Hemlock's experiments, the one that played by Daniel Logan, Mox, he knows Hemlock by name. They escaped, but then the Empire packed up, blew the place up, and left, and there was no loyalty to these kids from the other clones. Nobody tried to find them. Nobody tried to help them. So they're surviving, and then they meet the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch are totally different. They're all about loyalty. They're all about helping people out. So who knows? I mean, they might come in handy. We've got an episode coming up at the end, I believe, towards the end, about the cavalry, I think is in the title. So who knows? These kids might show up as part of that cavalry when they do that big raid, which I think we can assume is coming on Mount Tantiss.
Most likely. Or maybe. I shouldn't say most likely. Because somehow I also feel like Pabu is a place where you go to, you're off the grid, you're done, you're not fighting anymore.
It's still Boca Vista for Star Wars.
Yeah. Right. You have to deal with the housing authority there and everything, and it's a whole political mess. Like you said, the story is just kind of pushing forward the eventual reunion of the Bad Batch and Omega, but they got to find her first. So they need to sniff out these clues. They get to this planet, and then it's just action galore, sequence after action sequence, which is welcome after the monotony of the first episode. It was well executed monotony, if that's a way to review something, because that's the vibe you said Groundhog Day. That's the vibe. We want to be in captivity with Omega, so we have to deal with some of the day-to-day nothingness that's currently filling her life, and then get little clues along the way. But this one was a relief from the downtime that the first episode presented as far as action sequences go. So you got plenty of great action sequences here with slither vines, which also double as face huggers, and they grow into essentially Sarlacc pits.
Yeah. And Jim, was it my imagination or when they were having the battle with the big Sarlacc Slithervine, there were definitely some music cues from Return of the Jedi that I noticed that were showing up from the Battle of Carkoon. At least I thought. I don't know. Maybe if it might have been just me, but and John Williams got a credit on the second episode as far as just themes by John Williams. So there must have been
I'm
enough.
sure you're picking up on that. I have to admit, I didn't really have the volume cranked up too loud when I was watching it 7:15 in the morning. So some music cues got by me. I'll be sure to correct that. But hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we learn that Sarlacc pits are a result of experimentation that was going on in these Imperial laboratories by Dr. Hemlock?
Whoa.
And then they just get placed throughout the galaxy for whatever weird reason. Because have we ever seen a Sarlacc pit earlier in the Star Wars timeline? I'm not talking about books and novels and comic books and video games. I'm
Yeah,
talking
I don't
about
know. I mean,
legit hard canon.
It's a good question. Are we to assume when 3PO says that you'll digest in his belly for 1,000 years, that doesn't necessarily mean that Sarlacc pit is 1,000 years old?
Yeah, okay. You throw an interesting curveball into the mix because Sarlaccs obviously had to have been around for 1,000 years for people to understand that it takes 1,000 years to die. But I mean, who would know?
Who would know? 3PO could have just been rounding. He could have been making an educated guess. But it is very Sarlacc pitty with the teeth and the tentacles and all of that. And also, Jim, I know you were a little too old for G.I. Joe in the 80s, but for my fellow 80s kids, this is like right out of G.I. Joe. There was, in the second miniseries, there were these vines. Now, they didn't have teeth, but there were vines that were pulling down our heroes, Snake Eyes and Duke and Roadblock. So that's what it reminded me. And then calling them Slither vines, it was like, oh, yeah, that's like in Cold Slither, the rock band that the Dreadnoks, the Crimson Guard and the Dreadnoks became. So I was getting all kinds of G.I. Joe homages about this. But it was cool, and there was definitely a lot of, and intensity that was built up. And they end up with these kids. Part of me thought, like, well, why don't they just keep the kids with them? Like, they could use some extra hands, and these are clones. Why take them back to Pabu other than just, well, they're kids, and, we're not going to do that to them. We're not going to do what was done to us.
Maybe they feel bad, too, by taking a kid like Omega and putting her at such great risk that now she's in captivity with the Empire. And, maybe they feel like maybe kids shouldn't be in this fight.
Yeah, right.
Bad enough we lost one of them already. Now we got 3 more of them we could lose. It could be a guilt thing, too.
Lauren
Get them
chat
out of
says,
the way.
The second episode felt very Stranger Things to me. I was thinking that as well, with the little creatures running around and in the darkness, and not that Stranger Things is the only. Obviously, a lot of different movies and TV shows have had those jump scares and those little creatures running around. Aliens comes to mind, but yeah, I was picking up some Stranger Things vibes for sure. Guys have been very generous with the super chats. Let's hit some of these before we get into that third episode and how this thing wraps. David Fieldson says, what does Hemlock send after Omega? Who does Hemlock send after Omega? Assassin clone, bounty hunters, inquisitors, Vader. Also, was that Daniel Logan's voice in Ep 2? Love RFR. Thanks, David. Yes, that was Daniel Logan. Who does he send after Omega? I don't think we know. I don't think we're supposed to know.
Well, maybe he's just asking for speculation.
Oh, who might he have sent?
The Bad Batch are mercenaries. He can hire Hunter and Wrecker.
He's going to send Sid.
I've
got a mission for you guys.
I don't want to see any more of Sid. I am done. I love Rhea Perlman, but I am done with Sid. She stabbed him in the back in season 2. There's no relationship the two of them should be having.
No, there's no reason. Mm-hmm. Maybe a nice headshot.
Whatever happened to Sid? Did the Empire shut down her her business. God, I just watched those episodes this weekend too, and I've already.
I just remember her looking sad at the end as the batch were being arrested. You know,
Yes.
like, I'm
Well,
sorry,
she turned them in.
guys. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
she
she
must
did.
have gotten a big fat payout, and she's probably still on Ord Mandel eating popcorn and running the bar. Her only clientele is the Hammerhead action figure from the 70s.
All right, I don't know what this means here. Qui-Gon Jinn says, Anakin's severed limbs are in the vault, a la HTTE, heir to the Empire.
Where did they go? I think Anakin's limbs fell into the lava bed and were permanently destroyed. I
think they went right into the fire. I don't think they lobbed and sat there up on the beach.
Wouldn't it have been funny when he's, after Obi-Wan cuts him down and he's saying, you're my brother, Anakin. I loved you. And then you see like his arm kind of flapping on the ground in the background. It's like still flapping around.
Or they show Palps like throwing his torso up on the gurney and then an arm and a leg and another arm. And he's just stacking it up on top.
We'll just save him. Yeah. Like he's getting ready to throw meat on the grill.
Here's Ember. Ember says, don't know why exactly, but Omega is becoming one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. Chut chut boyos. All right. That's cool. I like Omega a lot. I will admit it. And there's so many reasons why, if somebody were just to tell me about the character on paper, there's be a lot of reasons I'd be like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's something about the great voice work that Ang Lee is doing and just the way she's written. It's hard to dislike somebody who has such a heart of gold that only sees good in other people. There's a purity about it, and it's not naivete to the point of annoying. She's got a lot of conviction behind it. It's not just Pollyanna, the sun will come out tomorrow, Little Orphan Annie stuff. I think there's real substance behind it because she's suffered.
Swank says this as a fan of Annie.
I do.
Sorry to expose that, but I'm talking about
please.
the Broadway play and maybe the movie.
Maybe the movie.
It's really interesting because it's such a fine line you could walk with kid characters because a lot of times they can be annoying.
Right.
They can be too precocious. They can be too gifted. And Omega never appeared. It almost appears like the character earns everything that she does. And in the third episode that we see, which is Shadows of Tantiss, she actually takes over the Imperial shuttle. The guys who came out to hunt her down, she takes their ship, and she does so in such a great way. I mean, it's such a well executed attack, and you could be saying, "Oh, well, no kid could do this," but again, it's earned. She spent all that time going on missions with the Bad Batch, learning how to become a warrior, and then in season 2, during those Pabu episodes, she's taking lessons to learn how to fly the Havoc Marauder, which is very similar to those Imperial shuttles. So it all connects for me. With this character, I'm never really saying, oh, this just doesn't fit. Something's off here. It all seems plausible within the context of the story for this kid to be pulling off the feats she pulls off. And then on top of it, she's so damn likable.
Yeah.
I mean, just really likable. And you root for her. You feel sympathy for her. There's a lot going on that's really good for this character. And I think that's a big accomplishment for the show because, as I said, it's not easy to do that with kid characters.
Definitely not. There's an exchange between Omega and Crosshair in the third episode where they're having their escape, and he says, did they teach you Plan 72? She says, Tech had me memorize all the plans. And he says, of course he did. That's
so she's well-schooled.
She's well-schooled.
Everything adds up for the character reacting the way she does and being able to be competent when fighting with grown men who are soldiers. So
it
works for me.
Here's the other thing about exactly what you said, Jim, about a lot of what that we give to Omega is earned. It's earned, and it's earned on screen. We see it. It's not like we just get exposition that says, "Oh, she's always shown these special gifts," or she's, Sabine comes to mind. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. I'm really liking Sabine as a live action character, as an animated character. She really kind of got on my nerves because she did everything by the time she was 16. Omega, I think they're using restraint, and I think that it's really good. So they're taking it. I mean, we're into the third season, and she's not doing super backflips, and you know what I'm trying to say.
Her competence matches her experience.
Yes, her competence matches her experience and the experience that we have seen play out on the show. I think that's absolutely. A few more super chats here. Let's how about we already read his. How about Tanya? Tanya says, I got to bounce. First 3 episodes were fantastic. Glad we're back. Clone Force 99 forever. RFR forever. Tanya, thanks so much for being a supporter of us here at RFR and always being in the chat. Love reading your comments.
She's great. She's an RFR VIP over on Patreon. Patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Yes. And she has hosted her first Q&A too. It was excellent. So
all about the Star Wars stuff she does in the classroom, right?
Yes. Yeah. So she's a school teacher and a Star Wars fan, which means she's a damn cool school teacher. So we talk about all kind of things. We tell you she's been to many conventions, Galaxy's Edge, and she shares stories about all that stuff. So yeah, that's RFR Q&A. You can only find it on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Don't forget to call if you're listening live, watching live, 708-866-1737. We've got a couple in the queue, but we do have more room on the switchboard for you. So we'll get to those calls in just a moment. 708-866-1737. Rich Brendel with a super chat says, Theory, Echo and Rex are on Mortis right now. Baba Booey, Baba Booey. All right,
Baba
Rich.
Booey. That was
wrong show. Echo and Rex are on Mortis right now.
no.
What? Why? Why? Rich, are you smoking the good stuff? What's
he's
going on?
up to something over there in Fond du Lac.
But appreciate the support nonetheless. All right, Kurt says, absolutely love the ticking clock of samples counting down to the climax of the arc. So much existential dread. Hyped after shows are back. RFR #1. Thanks, Kurt. That's awesome. Yeah, they did a lot to build the just to build the tension and all of that, and the subterfuge that was
Right.
brilliant. We all knew what was going to happen.
In the same way, the dripping wash basin was building. It was emphasizing the monotony.
Right.
Then having the centrifuge work clockwise before you finally see the results, it builds the tension because those results are going to be too revealing to Emery and all the Imperials. Also, I talked about Emery and how there might be a little bit more compassion for Omega than we've seen on the surface thus far. Will Emery share that information? Or will she trash the samples to protect Omega? I don't see why she would. She seems very loyal to the Empire, but again, she does come from the
she
same
does
place.
say at the end, she says the clone sample supported a positive M count transfer with no degradation from the specimen. She says it's Omega. Call them off. She was saying call off the guards.
That's right.
We can't have her
getting that. Okay, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I totally forgot that. She reports it to Hemlock right away.
Because they're ready to shoot him down. They're ready to shoot him down and take him out and be done. And at first he thinks that
was a brain fart on my
referring to it happened. CT9904. He was ruled out long ago. No, it's Omega. So the cat is out of the bag. Mariana, interesting question. Also a longtime supporter of us. Thanks, Mariana. She says, great season opener. Questioner, J&J. What do you guys say to those who say, all roads lead to the sequel, so why should I care? Just curious. Jim, what would you say to somebody that said, hey, I didn't love the sequels, and if what they're doing right now with these shows is just paving the way to the sequels, why should I care?
Well, I mean, it sounds like they're trying to fulfill gaps in the storytelling with these stories that, I mean, if they're all going to be as well executed as the Bad Batch, then I'd say you're missing out. And
Yeah.
if you don't like it that much, then you know I want people to be in it for the long haul always. But some people bailed so quickly during the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Um, I just would preach what Yoda preaches: patience. Just patience.
Yeah.
That's a very lame answer.
Well,
Maybe I can't really answer this question because I really do not concern myself with other people's fandom outside of these shows. I mean, Rebel Force Radio is all about sharing fandom and everything, but if somebody, I'm not interested in sharing someone's non-fandom. And I think if you're going to have a closed
right.
mind to Star Wars forever, then I would designate you a non-fan. And in that case, I really don't care.
Yeah. I would also say that sometimes the journey is more fun than the destination. Sometimes a road trip with your buddies is more fun than what happens when you get there. It's getting there. And so there's a lot of fun and a lot of things to be had. And by the end of all of this, once the road is paved to the sequels, you may have a better appreciation for those movies. That's what I'm hoping for. Dave Filoni did it in reverse with us with Clone Wars. A lot of criticism of the prequels, but Filoni gave us the Clone Wars for multiple seasons. And now there's a lot of people, for many reasons. Nostalgia is one of them. Also because so much of what's coming out of Hollywood is garbage, and the prequels look incredible compared to some of the current stuff that's coming out. There's a lot of things that has helped the prequels age better, but a huge factor is the Clone Wars. And so these other series might help the sequels as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who changed their opinions of the prequels after watching the Clone Wars. They felt like it enriched the entire story. So that's a great answer. Just look at the history.
Yeah.
Star Wars has proven that with the right approach, they can flesh out stories that have already been told. I mean, the prequels even fleshed out a lot of things in the original trilogy. And I'll always remember George Lucas saying that before episode 1 was released. He's like, yeah, the film I'm working on now is really going to change the way you look at the original trilogy and some of those characters. And I would always get terrified at that notion. George, why are you trying to change it? It was perfect. Don't try to make me look at it differently. I don't want to look at it differently, but I've discovered that's what keeps Star Wars interesting and alive and going and growing and evolving. It's not the same old over and over again. It enriches stories that have been previously told with new stories. And so I think that's very interesting. I don't know if too many other franchises have the ability to do that with such huge effect like Star Wars does, where you actually do look at things in a much different light.
Yeah.
After you've been brought up to speed with some new stories, providing new revelations about the characters and situations and stuff. That to me keeps the whole thing like alive. And it keeps my fandom alive too at the end of the day, I believe. So that's a good thing though, to say, look at what the Clone Wars did for the prequels in the minds of a lot of fans. And we'll see. I mean, also the Swiss cheese like holes in the sequel trilogy, filling those up has given Lucasfilm a specific focus now that those movies have come and gone. Now they at least have something they can focus on, as opposed to just throwing stuff up at the wall to see what would stick, which that's kind of my take on the sequel trilogy. Let's just throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall and see what sticks.
Isn't it interesting though that what they've clearly chosen to enhance is Palpatine surviving. That seems to be the thing that they are the most focused on. And I'm not naive enough to think that that's a reaction to fandom. I think that that's it's an interesting, wide open gap. Let's tell that it's real wide open. So why not get in there and flesh that story out and make that Return of Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker that much more interesting and have it make a lot of sense. Do want to get to the phones here. Let's start with, you know what? We're talking about an animated show, so let's check in with the younger set and our pal Blake with Blake's Take. We always love to hear from Blake. Blake, how you doing tonight? Chut, buddy.
Hey, Chut.
Chut.
Hey, Blake.
What you got?
All right. So I have two different things. One thing is a theory, and the other one is I connected all the things of Omega's DNA and how it will be used for a strand cast of Palpatine. But I'm going to start off with my theory.
Blake throwing down with the strand cast term.
Yeah.
Oh, just when I thought that I had my mind wrapped around everything in these episodes and the cloning, forgot about strand casts.
Yeah. Blake's last name is Hemlock.
The strand cast. Okay, Blake, are you able to remind RFR listeners and me about the strand casts? Is that just another name for clone in Star Wars?
Kind of, yeah. It's basically like, yeah. It's basically like
it's basically just a fancy name
one
for clone. I don't think there was ever any like real difference between.
Yeah, but it's more like they use it more with the Palpatine clones because they're trying to be able to clone Palpatine stuff.
Yeah.
So this way he can have a clone, and that's kind of what the strand cast is because they're trying to put the M count, which is what they call it in the show, see if they can carry all that into the clone, which is Palpatine strand cast.
Yeah. All right. So is Omega going to figure into the future of Palpatine's cloning efforts, his strand cast efforts?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That, like, in the episode, from the way they have it, it's like they're that's kind of how this entire area of so they're trying to clone Palpatine, and they need the right amount of M count on like certain the clones to see if it can handle Palpatine's power. And that's why in the Rise of Skywalker we see him hooked up to this big machine thing because it can't handle everything, and he can walk normal. That's not because there's, besides if you really are able to find a good person with a really high M count and all of that, then you could probably transfer Palpatine into that. But as we see in Rise of Skywalker, at that point they might have been able to do that, but it could have died or something. And now they're on to a different version of it, which is the one we see in Rise of Skywalker, hooked up to the big machine.
Well, yeah. Well, here's a question that I have. Now, I don't know much about cloning. I'm a real amateur when it comes to cloning efforts. But my thought was, all right, so you got a Grogu. Let's just take any character that has a high midichlorian count. We could take Anakin. Why not just clone the high midichlorian count being? Why do you have to take the midichlorians out of the Grogu, out of the donor, out of the Anakin, and inject it into a clone like Omega? Because that's what they're doing.
Are you sure of that?
Well, then what?
That's kind of what they're doing.
I think that's what they're doing.
Kind of stuff like that.
The clones, here's the way. I'm open to other ideas. Maybe I misunderstood this. The clone sample, this would be Omega's. This is Emery talking at the end of episode 3. Supported a positive M count transfer with no degradation from the specimen. So the clone's sample, Omega's sample, supported a so she was able to withstand
Or
a
blood.
positive M count transfer. Her blood. Yeah, right. Good point, Jim. That's the blood that they're testing, not necessarily the being.
Right.
The clone sample supported Omega's blood supported a positive M count transfer with no degradation from the specimen. So they're mixing Omega's blood with midichlorians.
Yeah, I mean, based on the dialogue, that's how
Because they're trying to.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah. That's why I think it's Palpatine's blood they're mixing in with all of the test samples.
Well, that is Palpatine.
Yeah,
so Palpatine's this.
If it has an
And
M
who
count,
the hell are the
like a good enough
specimens
M
that they're
count.
talking about? They're talking about specimens, and it's not the clones.
Well, they're probably taking blood from specimens
Grogu?
like Jedi, like clones.
Right.
I mean, they are researching on the clones.
And we know they're researching, like you said earlier. You've got all those Jedi that are in stasis, in the goo, in the amber goo. So
That could be where some of the blood is coming from as well. That
Possibly.
they mix in with the test subject's blood.
right.
So you take blood from a random clone and you put it in the centrifuge and drop in some midichlorian infused blood that you've taken from Palpatine or a Jedi, a dead Jedi, and you mix it. And if the cellular structure remains, then it could be potentially used to make a new clone that has force abilities.
John in the chat says, so not that she is force sensitive, but that she could become force sensitive?
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
Yes.
So we're talking about transferring force, not ability, because ability comes from training, but force proclivity or raw talent. That's really what the midichlorians are, is the raw talent.
Well, it has to be a clone that can then withstand not only the infusion of midichlorians into its bloodstream, but also be able to withstand the infusion of the soul of Palpatine into their system as well, because that's the end game. That these clones are being created so Palpatine can inhabit them and live forever.
So there's two things he needs. Obviously, he wants a superior clone. So he wants intelligence. He wants all the things that you would look for. But he also needs it to be able to withstand the infusion of the midichlorians. Yanni on the chat says, they can transfer the midichlorians to a biological creation, a strand cast, without the M count decreasing. That's what they're looking for.
Yes.
So,
and they even want to see an increase.
Omega would be able to handle it.
She'd be able to handle it. Exactly. So what we don't want and what we want to avoid this season is Palpatine inhabiting the body of Omega or an Omega clone or something to that effect. Blake, hey, buddy, thanks very much for calling. Glad to be back with you for another season. We do have a few more we want to get to.
Wouldn't that be great if he actually does inhabit Omega in this, and then the season just ends? Cut the black, roll credits. Yeah, right. So then the Emperor we meet in Return of the Jedi is actually Omega.
Yeah. I love it.
That's absurd. That's absurd, but I just had to throw it out there just for laughs.
Omega. Here is Patreon and a first-time caller, Matthew from California. Matthew, is it true you're really a first-time caller?
I am a first-time caller.
All right,
I am.
Give you a welcome bell.
A Patreon subscriber about 3 months ago.
Oh, well, we appreciate that. Thank you. What's on your mind tonight? Thanks for hanging out with us and waiting to be on the air.
Yeah, I teach college writing, and one of the things that's been an Achilles heel of this grand, beautiful universe of Star Wars has always been the writing part. When the writing part sings, the rest of it sings. The architecture, designs, costumes, lighting, And what we're seeing in these 3 episodes is really great storytelling, because great storytelling is kind of like Russian tea dolls. You open up one and there's a new mystery and a new one to open up after that. And amazing storytelling is Russian tea dolls, where you open them up and they grow when you pull out the new one, and it's getting larger than the prior one because the mysteries build as you explain stories. So I think you're right. I think, Jason, you talked about in prior seasons that, the adventure week got kind of old, and it really did. But with this, the second episode, you could tell that it seemed like it's an adventure story, but it does a lot of great deep character buildup, because it's not just about the Empire. It's also about Hemlock, because we know Hemlock and the Empire is an externalization machine. And so, it damages wherever it goes. It breaks things, and then to invent new technologies like to slow their vines. And it shows the disregard it has for nature and the environments that the Empire goes to. And so it doesn't just tell us about the Empire. It also tells us about the recklessness of Hemlock as a character. Right. Yeah. And that's just great storytelling. And we're building out the lore in episode 2 of season 3. So I think the storytelling is really exceptionally good. And on the whole, if you look at, the Clone Wars and Rebels, they don't start taking off writing-wise until about halfway through. And so it was not till season 3 of Clone Wars that it actually gets good. And season 2 of Rebels, it starts to get better. But season 2, became an exceptional show. Season 1, I didn't really care for that much, but now this is masterpiece kind of writing.
I think it's some excellent writing. I agree with you. I think that this, I gotta say that writing-wise, and I'm talking about dialogue, cohesion with character, it's stronger than some of the live-action stuff. Now, I'm not talking about big, broad stories. I'm talking about the nuts and bolts of the dialogue is better.
Character motivations.
And character motivation.
We talked about that with Ahsoka. The character motivations are always clear. And if the character motivations aren't clear, they're because they're purposely keeping that character in the dark. Like Emery, we don't know what her motivations are, even if she has motivations. But that's good writing, right? And Ahsoka didn't have that. Ahsoka did not have clear character motivations like we saw with Andor. And I have to say, when I saw these 3 episodes with my son, I felt like the writing was on par in some ways with Andor's first 3 episodes. Like smooth, linear storytelling, characters are well constructed. I don't have to constantly hit the suspension of disbelief button all the time.
Yeah. Man, you hit it. Matthew, thank you. You said you're new to Patreon.
I am new to Patreon. I it's interesting because I'm a minority. I did not like the prequels, and I kind of fell in love with Star Wars until Revenge of the Sith came out, and I was like, okay, great. And then when my son started showing Clone Wars, I was like, oh my God, this is back in. And I feel like when talking about these storytelling is like, we can't give up on Star Wars even when it disappoints us, because if we wait long enough, stuff will get enriched through further storytelling.
I love that. And that's the advice I think that Mariana was looking for. What do I tell my friends or people that say, stick with it.
Stick with it. 100%. Stick with it. Stick with it, because if you're a baseball fan, I know, Jimmy's a baseball fan as well, you go to the game, you don't always get the result you want, but you're still a fan.
Right. And we're allowed to bitch about our favorite teams, but we don't want those other people to bitch about our favorite teams and stuff like that. Yeah.
100%.
Matthew,
100%.
thank you.
We're at the end of the day.
Dude, thank you. Great call. And please call back again. Our notes say that Matthew is a college professor. So yeah, definitely interested in getting more of Matthew's takes as the season goes on. Yeah, maybe he'll up to a VIP one month that we can get a Q&A with Professor Matthew. That'd be
very interesting.
All about storytelting. Here we got Alex from West Virginia. Alex, you're on with RFR. Hello.
Chut, and hey, fellas. I think we're off to a mostly good start this season. I think could be a little faster and more intense in a few places, but no major complaints. I do want to bring attention to one detail, though. Nothing got a reaction out of me across these 3 episodes until the very end, as Omega and Crosshair are escaping, and then Hemlock turns and looks at the camera and says, a minor setback, and I just started howling laughing because of the whole Thrawn comparison.
Right. That was very Thrawn. I'm glad you brought that up. Very Thrawn. A minor setback.
He says, wait, it gets better because he says, I have the full resources of the Empire at my disposal. We will find her. We will. Good.
Yes, we
good,
have them on a leash.
On a leash, that's right. Boy, when will they learn? You know what? I think Thrawn gets a bad rep, but he's in a long line of some of these villains that shake their fist and claim victory. Yeah, that's very true. What do you think?
Tarkin to a level was like that. You know, Grand Moff Tarkin.
To the last.
Yeah, he's like, evacuate in a moment of triumph.
Oh, right. Yes, right.
Moment of triumph. Famous last words, pal.
So, Alex, what we were talking about the tone of this show, and our last caller, Matthew, was mentioning there's a sophistication in the writing, and we're feeling it too. Sitting around having done these after shows for every episode of every Disney Plus Star Wars series so far, there is I think there is a sophistication and a tightness in the writing. Maybe not in every Bad Batch episode, but certainly I think in these three and towards the end of the second season. Would you agree?
I think so. And unlike some other Disney era Star Wars projects, to borrow a phrase, they're setting up the dominoes and they're knocking them down. They're establishing things, and it's like show, not tell, as you alluded to earlier. So I do think there is some intellect behind this writing.
Yeah, I think so too. There's, we talked about in some of the previous shows that it felt like, Jim, I know some of us who talked about it, like feeling like first draft stuff. Whereas I don't get that with Bad Batch, and I realize how crazy this sounds. Oh, Swank likes the animated shows better than live action. I'm not necessarily saying I like them better, but I do think that they're when they're tighter storytelling, I think, and tighter dialogue than some of the live action stuff that seems very ham-fisted at times.
I think they have a longer production schedule too. So they just out of the natural process of creating an animated series, everything isn't so immediate. So things can get tweaked over and over again. Filoni used to tell us he'd be tweaking stuff up until the week of release with some of this stuff. So you have that flexibility when you're dealing with animation, and you also have the ability to sink your teeth way deeper into the whole process because it just naturally takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They have more time and they can go over it. And there's a lot of stages, there's a lot of phases from the writing to getting them into the studio to animating it. There's stopgaps. There's moments, I think you're right, that they can tweak. Danny from Las Vegas, thanks for your patience. Appreciate it. Also a Patreon member. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, boys?
All right. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, so I'm going to throw out this crazy theory that I was talking to Tyler over.
Oh, good. I love crazy theories.
So, I know you're going to like it, Jimmy, because it involves your boy Danny. I think that there's a reason why there's a reason why the first 3 episodes we get a little cameo with Daniel Logan. Okay. At the end of the episode, Hemlock says that he has basically the full support of the Empire, right? They got to get Omega. They can't kill her because obviously she's got the juice that's going to make the Emperor's plan go this way, right? But what is Omega's one weakness? Obviously, it's family, right? Her brothers. She's got a soft spot for Crosshair. She's even got a soft spot for this new chick who obviously she has no idea who she is, but she's her sister, that Amory chick, right? What if the Empire or Hemlock, puts a bounty out there. Obviously, the Empire has worked with bounty hunters before. That's why we get a little glimpse of Cad Bane, right? What if Boba Fett, takes a bounty on, and not necessarily as full, the Boba Fett we know with the Mandalorian suit and everything. What if he goes undercover? Because Omega's weakness is clones, her brothers. What if there's a way where Boba Fett infiltrates their little triangle, or their circle? And Tyler reminded me that in those lost episodes, Cad Bane and Boba Fett get in an entanglement. That's where you get that scar on his helmet. What if that's like the first or the second time they get in a scrap? And in the Book of Boba Fett, where he finally kills Cad Bane, it's like
what I like.
Revenge or
Danny, what I like about your theory, no, it's all right. It's all right. But what I really like about your theory is that it does help establish the lore of Boba Fett as being one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy. If he is able to capitalize on his being a clone and infiltrate and somehow use that to his advantage to get Omega, even if it doesn't last, it will certainly cause a rise in his stock with the Empire, and could be why he's on Vader's short list of bounty hunters to call when he needs help. So I like that. I think we need to see. I think it'd be good for us to see Boba Fett have his first big major capture, his first big bounty come in. I think that's a really cool. And I love the way you tied it back to this is why they're planting the seed with the Daniel Logan clone character, because this might come back. I don't think it's that crazy of a theory, Jim. I think I don't think it's that crazy.
I love it. I think it's very clever. Very clever indeed.
And then
to bring Boba Fett into it.
They've been dropping him from the start. Remember when they went down to the facility in I think it was the first season, and one of the caretaker of Omega was like, "Oh, there's Alpha or whatever." They dropped Boba Fett's name. I don't know. I think there's a reason why Danny Logan was on the first 3 episodes. Dave gave us the Mortis Gods and Ahsoka. I think he's given us what everyone wants, and everyone wants to see Danny Logan as
Boba Fett, Daniel Fett. I love it. I love it. And if he's listening, he's gonna love your theory too, I'm sure. Danny, from one Danny to another. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon, and dude, thanks for calling and hanging with us tonight. Got a few more super chats that we would like to share with you. Here's our buddy Sud. Sud says chut and hey. That's really hey, right?
There you go. There you go.
Really love the premiere. Really love the premiere episodes, especially finally learning for certain why Omega is so special. Yeah. Yeah. I think it is answering just that. Why should we care about Omega? Well, we care because she is the key for some reason. We don't know why. We don't know if it's because she is a unaltered clone. That could be.
I wonder how Nala Se had the knowledge that Omega would be able to show up as a positive host for an increased M count. Nala Se obviously had run similar tests on her in the past, you'd have to think, or she just had some knowledge of Omega's physiology and figured, well, it'll definitely work on her even without even trying.
Right.
But Nala Se had the knowledge that Omega would turn up as a positive host for midichlorian enhanced blood. So, or that her blood would be able to mix favorably with midichlorians. I wonder how she knew that.
It's possible that she never knew for certain. but she had a really good hypothesis or a really good hunch
Yes.
that she had an idea based on her knowledge of cloning that, boy, perhaps an altered clone is the answer here. Yeah. But you're right. She definitely was ahead of all this because she's been protecting Omega from the beginning.
Yeah. So she knew that there was something about her that would show up as a positive on this test, even though the test hadn't been conducted yet. Why would she be running that kind of test on Omega's bloodstream when Camino was still functioning and they were living there and working in the labs? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's hard to know. Well, Dominique says she knew because she created her. I mean, yeah, that's just a surface level answer to why. I mean, why would she know that? I mean, why would it just like, oh yeah, I know about these kind of experiments. Yeah, sure, I've done this before. Yeah, it's
oh, you want the midichlorian version of the clone?
Oh yeah, we've done that.
What is it like a
sure.
car salesman? Oh, you want that model? Yeah, of course we've got that. I got to go back and talk to my manager, but I think we can work something out.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Here's Peter Beiser, also a great champion of us here at Rebel Force Radio. Says, man, I missed these shows. 11 more weeks together. That's right, Peter. Very excited to be here each and every week. Just a little update. So as these episodes come out, for the most part, we're going to be going live on Wednesdays because they're going to be single drops, and we can get to it and be together on the day that they drop. But when you see these 2 or 3 episode drops, we're going to be together on Thursdays, always at 9 p.m. Eastern. So just to make your scheduling a little bit easier, and also make sure you're following us on social and on YouTube so you know when we're going to go live. Turtle Wars. Wow, Turtle Wars. Thank you, man. He says, here's to the return of new Star Wars, RFR after shows, and the confirmation of the May the 4th live RFR event this week. So that's right. We are going to be celebrating May the 4th in style this year.
Yeah, we'll be out in Bristol, Connecticut. Live RFR at the Rockwell Theater. Tickets are on sale now. We'll also be screening Empire Strikes Back and lightsaber training and vendors, food trucks. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a good old time. So it's going to be a day-long celebration of May the 4th in Bristol, Connecticut. All the information is up on our website, rebelforceradio.com. We hope you can join us.
I got to tell you about an experience that I had real quick. Speaking of Bristol, over the weekend, I took boxes and boxes of some of my duplicate action figures. I was looking to downsize a bit, and I took them to this great place, really great used toy store called Happy Pappy's here in North Canton, Ohio. And just wanted to get some trade in. I just like, yeah, just, let me get some I can trade in. And so I was talking to the owner, and he was asking me about different cons coming up and stuff like that. And he said, I said, it looks like I'm going to be in Bristol with the podcast. And he's like, yeah, I heard about Bristol. And now this is a guy that is not a listener of RFR. He admitted to me. He's like, I don't listen to your podcast. I'm glad to know you, but I don't listen to your podcast. But he did say that he had heard about Bristol and he was thinking about going to Bristol. So very, very well, maybe some dealers out there, some toy dealers and things going on. So I thought that was pretty cool that word is spreading about May the 4th in downtown Bristol, Connecticut.
Yeah, they're looking to make it a really special event. And so naturally they called us.
Well, we'll make it special, all right. So Sal B. Crumb says, chut chut, ya nerf herders, pumped to have the Bad Batch back, and most of all, live after shows. Hashtag Omega is Snoke's mother. Oh, boy, does that really... boy, I hate thinking about that. That's worse than thinking about your mom and dad.
Some people in the chat were noting a similarity in Hemlock, Dr. Hemlock, and Snoke. Some people think that Snoke could be like a disfigured Hemlock type of clone. I don't know.
Wow. Palps did say that he had, he would give all the Empire's resources, and Palps is definitely a guy like, even when you're performing well in your duties for him, there's no winning, right? There's no coming out on the good side of being in allegiance with Palpatine. There's just everybody ends up on the with the short stick.
It's a deal with the devil is what it is.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. Here's Evan Cooper. Evan says Omega is really growing on me the same way Ahsoka did. Yeah, us too. We're big fans. Count me in. I am an Omega fan. I won't wear a t-shirt, but I'll say I'm an Omega fan. Season 3 off to a good start, according to Chuck Simkovich. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. Thanks for the super chat. And finally, we got Guy Dale from Denver says Emery is clueless. Nala Se tinkered and made Omega. Nala Se tinkered and made Omega. Jim, is it possible? Is Omega just an experiment of Nala Se's?
Well, I mean, aren't all the clones experiments? Were they all created in a laboratory?
Good point. Right. Yeah. That's why she calls her little sea monkey.
She does not call her that.
All right. No, she doesn't.
That is not canon.
All right, one last call. We've got a Patreon VIP that's been very patient waiting. We got Eric from Phoenix. He's joining us. Eric, hello. Welcome back to the Rebel Force Radio After Show. Bad Batch.
Hey,
what's
Eric.
going on?
Yeah, wow. 3 great episodes.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to Tyler. I mean, you guys have touched on this, but a couple things that just stood out to me. I mean, the storylines, were pretty linear, and there was some stuff that I kind of expected, but 2 things that really add to the quality of the show. Number one is just the animation and the lighting. And, you talked about that water drip. I mean, this is animation. That wasn't real. That was made in a computer. And then just the music. I mean, the music was just phenomenal in these episodes. And it just added to the overall experience. And it just keeps getting better and better each season, each episode. It seems like they ratchet it up. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that, along with the good writing.
Yeah. The show has really hit its stride. And as much as I would like to say, oh, no, let's get a couple more seasons, there's nothing wrong with going out on top. There's nothing wrong with going out strong. It's okay. Seinfeld did it. MASH did it. I Love Lucy did it. Go out when you're at your peak. And maybe this could spin off into other things. We've speculated about a big Clone War, like Clone Wars 2, something like that. But these characters, I feel, if Rebels can garner the kind of loyalty that it has, and having them show up in live action, I feel as a Bad Batch fan that certainly the Bad Batchers could drum up that same kind of loyalty and that same kind of fan support and show up in maybe something live action, which would be a lot of fun.
Or their story is all going to be self-contained in these 3 seasons. I believe the show was designed to run the course of 3 seasons. I don't think everyone from the Bad Batch is going to make it out alive. We've already lost Tech.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think there will be other casualties amongst the crew.
I think Crosshair's on the list.
Oh yeah. With his gimpy hand now. I mean, he's already starting to lose his purpose.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Eric, what do you think about Crosshair here in season 3?
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I think you guys are spot on. I think if you look at a complete character arc, what does he need to do? He needs to do something heroic. And then my guess is he's going to go out dying, doing that heroic sacrifice, whatever that is. I mean, to me, that just makes such a great arc for the character. And I think it would be fitting for him. I don't believe we're going to get a bad Crosshair again. I don't think we're going to go backwards there. I do think there'll be something going on with his, the issues he's having with his hand. And, guys in chat were talking about, is that all the experiments they've been doing on him? Is that all the, they messed with his chip? They shocked him. He had that deal where he was out in that cold planet for a long time. So there's some issues there that they probably have to develop, but I definitely don't think he goes back to being quote unquote bad Crosshair.
Yeah, I hope not. I think that he's been a pretty bad dude. So I'm with you. I don't want to see him go backwards, and I think in a way that the show would be going backwards if it went that direction. So, thanks, Eric. Always great talking to you, buddy. Appreciate it very much. I think that's it. I think that's going to wrap things up for us here on the Bad Batch after show. That was a cue for the music, and since we're back, hold on, let me find it. I got it. Jim, entertain the people while I find the outro music. Yeah, you're a little rust on the gate. That happens with the onset of these.
I just really have to say I enjoyed hearing Ian McDiarmid back as Palpatine. He is the Emperor. He always will be the Emperor. And he said some pretty heavy things in this episode. Nothing more important to secure the future of the Empire. Project Necromancer. So that's, that's Palpatine's, his desire to be immortal. And again, following the storyline that was originally told in Dark Empire, where Palpatine would transfer his evil essence to clones. But the clones in Dark Empire always began to fail rather quickly because they couldn't withstand the evilness and the darkness. It was beyond clone capacity. So I think it's just great that shows like this, like The Mandalorian, like The Rise of Skywalker, yes, like The Rise of Skywalker, are going back to this Dark Empire idea and really fleshing it out. Because for me, that was always one of my favorite expanded universe tales, was the Dark Empire comic line. I really loved it. And, I'm glad to see they're cherry picking from the best stuff, like the Timothy Zahn stuff, like Dark Empire, to continue telling these stories, taking the good ideas and just putting a new spin on them. I think that's great.
Well, it's been great being here with you, Jim, and with Tyler. Thank you, Tyler, our great call screener and the official program observer. Tyler, is there anything that we missed? Any points that you might like to make with these first 3 episodes of the 3rd and final season of the Bad Batch?
I think you guys covered it. I think our callers covered a lot of good calls tonight. But I think this 3-episode premiere kind of showed that there is no room for filler in this season, or so-called filler episodes. And I still have questions that I want answered. Like what's going to happen in LSA. I want Crosshair's hand shaking to be addressed, and those royal guards, they looked beautiful.
Like the royal guards did look great.
That one scene was amazing. So,
I love that. When I was taking screen captures of the episodes, I must have taken 10 screen it was like I was paparazzi taking pictures of Palpatine coming off of the Imperial shuttle. I couldn't get enough. And it's like, okay, Swank, you got enough pictures of Palpatine and the Royal Guards. But no, it looked awesome. So loved it.
I loved how they were backlit when they were coming down the ramp. So you saw the light sort of shining on their cloaks, and it looked bright red and then just got darker as you move into the center of the figure. But I just don't ever recall seeing Imperial Guards being backlit that way. And it made them look particularly more ominous and evil. And I hope we get to a point in Star Wars where we see Imperial Guards full out brawling, because we really don't get to see that ever. I hope we thought
we were going to see it in the prequels, and Yoda just kicks their ass like right away. He walks into Palpatine's office and they're gone.
Yeah, that was just making a statement about Yoda,
That was right. Because they're supposed to be
think these
great
guys
fighters.
are so badass? They never met Yoda before.
Yeah, shove this up your comic books, nerds. All right, Tyler, thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it. Couldn't do the show without you. We'll see you next week, okay?
See you next week. Thanks, guys.
All right, buddy. All right. Jimmy Mack, final thoughts here on Bad Batch Season 3, the finale, the final season, first 3 episodes. We've got 12 more to go. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Lurka hounds are basically dogs. So why don't they ever just put a real dog in Star Wars? I think we're at that point now where we can accept seeing real dogs in Star Wars. We never get real dogs. Was there ever a real dog in Star Wars? Like, your typical Fido?
There was a duck in the original novelization.
That's right.
To it.
Luke has he's talking to Ben Kenobi and remembers once owning a dog. Man, I'd love to see some dogs running around Tatooine and stuff. I think that would be a hoot. I do think there's more to Emery than meets the eye. She appears to be very loyal to the Empire, but I think sooner or later that there's going to be a sisterhood connection between her and Omega. And I think we're getting foreshadowing for that in this episode. Most notably, Emery showing she does show a little warmth toward Omega by giving her little homemade doll back. So, I mean, why should she care? She's the one who took it away. True. But she recognized that was something that Omega really needed for like a security thing. So I think that shows right there. That gesture alone shows there's more to Emery than meets the eye. I do want more information on that injured hand or that shaky hand of Crosshairs. I'm not buying this. His hand just started shaking out of nowhere because of whatever. I mean, people in the chat were saying everything from PTSD to experimentations going on, like on his brain and stuff. And I don't know, man. The guy's he's a sure shot. All of a sudden his hand starts shaking and there's no explanation for it. Really, one of the few complaints I have, if that's even a complaint. I just think that was kind of, it's popping up out of nowhere. And it's obviously going to continue to be an issue as the series unfolds. I'm really curious about what Palpatine was looking at in that cloning container. And I think it really does come down to Grogu or Snoke. Something that should be mentioned is Palpatine reveals that not everyone within the Empire is on board with these cloning experimentations that are going on, courtesy of Dr. Hemlock. Palpatine says, many in our own ranks consider Hemlock's work to be an abomination. So I thought that was kind of interesting, Palpatine, he's out there taking the pulse. Cloning, are you into it? No? Abomination. Ooh, man, I didn't see that coming.
Are you into it?
And Hemlock's ambition gets revealed at the end of the 3rd episode when he says he starts lobbying Palpatine, saying he wants to become the Imperial Scientific Minister, the Sinister Minister.
Oh, it's just all ambition, isn't it, with that guy?
Yeah.
Just ambition. Yeah. He's not a true believer. He just wants the promotion.
Well, I think there is he does desire to continue the quest for scientific breakthroughs. I think he's a scientist at his core, but he's a very ambitious one who wants to be like part of Palpatine's cabinet or something. Imperial Scientific Minister sounds like a cabinet position to me. So we'll see how that all pays off for Hemlock. Palpatine said, in all due time. Or he said, all in due time. Or whatever the hell he said, it doesn't matter. Puff a pig, not in this episode.
All right, that'll wrap it up for us here this week on the Rebel Force Radio After Show, looking at the Bad Batch. Eric from Phoenix was asking you, because Eric is not available on Wednesday nights, so you'll be happy to know that when we have multiple episodes dropping in a week, we will be doing these on Thursday nights, always at 9 p.m. Eastern Time throughout the run of Season 3 of The Bad Batch, so make sure you're following us on YouTube for that. Just a few mentions here. Patreon, you heard so many In fact, I think all of our callers tonight were Patreon members. So please do check it out. Patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, where you get, if you like watching Rebel Force Radio through these live shows, you're going to love Patreon, because if it's all access, you get the RFR weekly flagship show, full show videos. You can look at us as you are listening to us. And it is just an awesome, awesome community of Star Wars fans. But the thing is, you want to get those exclusive podcasts that you can't get anywhere else. You can't subscribe to them on Spotify or any of your podcatchers. You can only get them on Patreon. We also would appreciate it if you would like us on or subscribe and follow us on our Instagram, our X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook. Check out our website, rebelforceradio.com. Subscribe if you can, if your podcatcher of choice allows you to do so. And we love to have your reviews if you can review the podcast. In fact, we love to have your comments below this video right here as a review. That really helps us on YouTube. Some of our Bad Batch after shows on YouTube last season just went crazy through the roof. So a lot of that has to do with your engagement, your great comments. So please leave a comment. But we'll be back next week for more Bad Batch after shows and the return of Rebel Force Radio, the flagship podcast. So we will see you next time, next week, for more Star Wars. We are your source for the Force. We are Rebel Force Radio. Until next week, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.